For my capstone project, I worked with a local winery here in Chautauqua County, New York, to measure their emissions, the amount of carbon they sequester on their 300-acre farm, and I also looked into land use policy as that was a personal interest to the owners. But to introduce the winery itself, I will leave that to the Johnsons.
My name is Fred Johnson. I'm with Jennifer here, the third generation owner of Johnson Estate Winery. We've been in business since my grandfather started the apple business in 1911. And we've been in the wine business since 1961, which makes us the oldest farm winery in the state of New York. 3 generations. My grandfather planted Concord grapes and grew apples and cherries. My father started with the first wine grapes in western New York, varieties like Sable and Chancellor. And then my brother and I, in the early 2000s, planted vinifera wines, Riesling, Pinot Noir, and now Chardonnay. So those are the 3 kinds of grapes that you'll get to taste on our fall vineyard walks.
With their emissions inventory, I found their largest source of CO2 emissions is directly from fermentation. Due to their location, most of their electricity comes from renewable resources and is therefore not a source of emissions for them. When looking at the amount of carbon they sequester a great deal more than they emit directly. This is largely due to their farming practices of utilizing cover crops in the vineyards and returning organic waste created in the winemaking process back into the soil. Part of my project was to suggest ways to reduce emissions. The primary way they could reduce emissions on the farm was through carbon capture, although it is not really economical for a winery to do so. Another easy way to reduce emissions is by mixing in biodiesel into their regular diesel fuel, which can be utilized in tractors to reduce some emissions that are created on the farm. While I only looked at Scope 1 and 2 emissions directly from the farm, the wine industry as a whole's largest source of emissions is the glass in creating glass wine bottles. One of the best ways to reduce these emissions is to switch to something known as bag-in-box, which the Johnson Estate already has for some of their wines. Large utility-scale solar projects have become more widespread in the areas surrounding the winery and is a concern for the winery owners. So part of my project, I looked into smart land use policy. The Johnsons believe in being responsible stewards of their land, so as part of my project, I looked at the best way they could utilize their property, whether it be through installing solar panels or continuing on with their sustainable forestry practices. What I found was that for rural counties like ours, the best way to utilize our lands is through afforestation, utility-scale wind, and sustainable firewood harvesting. I would like to thank the Johnsons for working with me on this project, and I look forward to seeing how their sustainability efforts evolve in the future.